Welcome to the first in the series of the John Ejekum Kufuor Annual Disability Lecture. This means that next year we'll be here, the first of many to come. We are here to listen to a vexed matter, an important issue that concerns all of us. We are able today, but down the line, who knows? Disability should not be inability. And so today we have gathered here for this important public lecture by one of us, a lecturer from this university. This public lecture is a joint initiative between CAS, the University of Professional Studies, the John Ejekum Kufuor Foundation, and the Rights of Youth and Disability International. This is a partnership that is concerned about issues that concerns persons with disability. It's been 19 years since the Act 715. And I believe we all are pondering what has happened since then. We have made some strides, but we believe there's more to be done. To chair this important function is a man who is passionate about issues of disability. He's also very passionate and understand about the potential of using the railway as transportation. I understand he's an honorary patron of the Railway Union, and he's also passionate about education. I don't want to bore you with a long profile of the man. He will be here to speak for himself. So with a round of applause, let's welcome the chairman for the function for today, Nana Kwabena Bomfeh.
My daughter, which one are we? My daughter, thank you very much for making my death very short. Usually when people say they start from the day nursery you went to and then end up wishing you dead. But thank you very much. I'm not much of a protocol man. So please, I've seen very interesting people that I know, most especially the gentleman here who is an elder in my community and one of those who have the right to unseat me as a chief. So I'll pay special respects to him. Mr. Kwesi, don't unseat me. Okay. Good evening. And forgive me if I sometimes forget myself and don't say Dr. Bomfeh. So I used to call him Kabila. I knew him as a baby, you know, when his thinking was going through all kinds of things. Now he reads theology, and I sit back and laugh at him. I've seen him grow, and he's hunted me for over 1 year. About 1 year over this talk. So I'm glad that finally it's going to take place with the support of Konrad Nah Foundation and also another one, and most importantly, under the auspices of the John Ejekum Kufuor Annual Disability Lecture. When you first told me, I said, my young man, Africa is disabled. The whole continent, because the most important thing that you have in the world to use, the greatest resource is your mind. But who said do you use to think? Is it the head of your ancestors or those who came to colonize you? And of course, that's what we'll be using. So it tells you that mentally, most of us, almost all of us, are disabled. But That's just by way of getting in. But I have a friend. He's now joined the ancestors. Very nice man, headed a huge institution, educational institution. Suddenly, he realized he had diabetes. It led to the chopping of his 2 legs. So the idea of physical disability is not too far from us. We live with it. But we don't bring it into our consciousness. It's there. And then if you go into the compartmentalized thinking of Europe, try to see, oh, they are there, they are. No, within the African being of all together, I am disabled as he is disabled. So I share in everybody's disability, and whatsoever wholeness that I have also is shared by others. So when Dr. Bomfeh brought up this idea of giving this talk, my mind went to this man, this friend of mine. And probably it's not because of him that I'm here, neither because of President Kufuor that I'm here, but it's because of that gentleman. Because when his 2 legs went away, he sat down and started working. He was sitting, wrote computer programs, he learned how to use If you're alive by today, I'm sure that he'll be in AI. What I'm saying is that nobody, the only disability that you really have is a disability of the mind. But once your mind works and it functions, and you don't have to go to Ankaful or the psychiatric hospital, then you are a full part of the society. However, some are physically challenged. One day I was teaching, and I gave a proverb, which you all know. But that proverb also, the answer that I had from some of the students, also set me thinking. It's a very common proverb, and something happened in class, and I said, oh, so Frafuse about to Babawa, Nananansi, Babado. So after saying it, after the class, 2 guys who were partially blind, he walked up to me and said, what you are saying was abusing us. I hadn't heard that before. So I started thinking, I've not found an answer to that one. And I'm still thinking about the appropriate words that will show that I share in his partial blindness, and so on and so forth. So as the lady was talking, Kabila's thing is about the stark reality of what happens to disabled people. There's a lot that I could say. Right now, isn't the country, disabled through Galamsey? Something is mentally wrong. You know, and these have been my worries. Even though I take my mind out of Ghana news, I worry about the fact that some people elsewhere want to create a 3rd World War for nothing that I have done, just because they want to sell their arms, they want to kill people and so on. Are those people normal human beings? That's what I've been meditating on. And besides that, you've seen me wear my costume. I'm also wondering the role of people who wear this costume within the Ghanaian polity and within Africa. So Kabila's invitation, Dr. Bomfeh's invitation, was really out of the blue. And it has taken me out of my my stream of consciousness. I'm sure that he is going to make a very, very good statement that we're all going to appreciate. And perhaps after that, we may all enter advocacy in making sure that our brothers and our sisters also get some ease and special, because to be disabled, anytime you're on the streets and you see somebody who is disabled begging, is the worst mirror of yourself that you can see. Because that is the person that we should carry on our shoulders. But they are there wheeling themselves and begging. What causes that? What causes all this so-called poverty of the disabled person? Perhaps Dr. Bomfeh might not go into that kind of tangent. But we need to start thinking about who we are, what we are, and where we are going. And this legislation, Article 715, is going to help us understand our roles better. So I feel highly honored to have been invited to cross many galamseyed rivers. If you pass the Pra, you can drink it as Milo. You know, across many rivers to be here to share in this great occasion with Dr. Bomfeh. I hope he's not going to CPP himself. He's not going to MPP himself. Neither is he going to NDC himself. We want to see disability through the eyes of a Ghanaian. Thank you.
I would like to welcome the Vice Chancellor of the University of Professional Studies, Professor John Kweku Mensah-Mauto, to welcome us.
Thank you, Mrs. Abaloko. The founder of the John Kufuor Foundation, whom I've been told is not here, Your Excellency John Ejekum Kufuor, the former president of Ghana, Senior Francis Poku, former IGP, Nana, the chair, distinguished members of the diplomatic corps, representatives of disability organizations, my colleague members of academia, the media, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, I'm very, very much honored and privileged to welcome you all and also give the opening remarks of the CS John Kufuor Annual Disability Lecture held under the thought-provoking theme, I know, formulated by my good friend, Dr. Bomfeh, popularly known as Kabila, whom I've known for over 3 decades now. That is the stark reality of disability legislation in Ghana. And please, Chair, Nana Chair, let me begin by acknowledging and commending His Excellency John Ejekum Kufuor for his visionary leadership and lifelong dedication to building a just, inclusive and progressive society. Indeed, this lecture, inspired by his endearing values, continues to provide a vital platform for research, policy engagement, and national reflection on critical issues that shapes Ghana's democratic and social development. And indeed, it reminds me on the day myself and Dr. Bomfeh went to see the former president to inform him of this special program. He was so passionate about it and even told us about the things he did to create an all-inclusive society when he was in power, and also reminded us that for him, if there were the resources, he would have been able to achieve all that he wanted to do. However, in view of the limited resources, he was able to create an environment which was more inclusive than he came to meet. And Nana Chair, I also reminded the former president that, taking a clue from where he started and ended, as a university, we ensured that for every facility we have on our campus, it was disability friendly. I thought you clap for UPSA because it's something we do now. There's no facility on this campus without disability friendliness. Even our lecture blocks, we have to spend more to create that environment. You don't need to climb the staircase. In the main administration, we have same. Those without it, we make sure we have an elevator to move you to any office you want to move to. And we took this clue from national policy. Ladies and gentlemen, the theme for this year's lecture invites you to confront a difficult but very, very necessary truth that while Ghana has made commendable progress in recognizing the rights of persons with disabilities. Significant gaps remain between the promises of our laws and the reality of their implementation. The Persons with Disability Act 2006, Act 715, indeed was a landmark achievement representing hope and legal recognition of millions of Ghanaians living with disabilities. Yet, one could easily ask, nearly 2 decades later, is access to education, healthcare, employment, transportation, and public infrastructure remain or continue to remain a real challenge after 2 decades of this act as passed by Parliament? One could easily respond that it is still a challenge. In fact, the delay even in enacting the necessary LI also is another issue. I've been told that as a country, we've signed on several charters to protect the rights of persons living with disabilities. And we can once again confidently answer or respond to the fact that we are yet to meet all. That is why there's this gap, and that is why I want to take this advantage or to take this opportunity to acknowledge my good friend who, after several years of advocacy, has joined the faculty of UPSA, Dr. Bomfeh. Thank you so much. As an academic community, indeed, we also recognize that legislation alone cannot bring about inclusion. It must be implemented by research-informed policy, institutional advocacy, and national shift in attitude. Universities, in particular, have a moral responsibility to lead this transformation by ensuring that our campuses are accessible, our curricula are all-inclusive, and our research continues to influence equitable research policy outcomes. Ladies and gentlemen, today's conversation is therefore not only about law, but about justice and shared community in humanity, as well as what we find among ourselves. It is also about creating Ghana where every individual, regardless of ability, can learn, work, and thrive with dignity. That is why this afternoon we are here to listen to a lecture by Dr. Bomfeh, who will share with us his findings and experiences when it comes to disability and the law. So, Nana, on behalf of the university, I wish to once again express our profound appreciation to the former president, His Excellency John Jacob Kufuor Foundation, and its partners for sustaining this important annual lecture. And I'm very happy to share that UPSA is part of the sponsors of this program. That is why I'm here to also share that we share in the vision of our colleague, Dr. Bomfeh, to conduct series of research every year to see how we can fill the gap. Let me also thank all the other sponsors, the speakers, those here present, who are also here to engage in today's topic and also go out there not to only enjoy and benefit from what our doctor, that's Dr. Bomfeh, will be sharing with us, but go out there to be advocate of persons living with disability. On this note, let me thank you for your audience. Let me thank you once again for accepting to be part of this lecture. Thank you.
As I initially said, this initiative has been made possible by the partnership of a group of people, and so we would like to hear brief messages from them. So let's welcome the country director for CAS, Anne, if you're here, will give us a few words. Let's welcome her.
Thank you very much. I'll keep it brief because I don't want to stand too long between yourself and the main speaker of the evening. Chairman Nana Kwabena V, Dr. James Kwabena Bomfeh Jr., distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, for the sake of time, please allow me to stand on established protocol. It is a profound honor for me to join you tonight at the inaugural John Kufuor Annual Disability Lecture, held under the theme of the stark reality of disability legislation in Ghana. On behalf of Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, or KAS in short, I extend a heartfelt greeting to all gathered here this evening. We at KAS are deeply grateful to be a part of this very important initiative, as it reflects a shared conviction, namely that a society's strength is measured not only by the prosperity of its economy or the soundness of its institutions, but by how it values and includes every individual citizen. This belief lies at the heart of our work, rooted in the principles of democracy, the rule of law, and social justice, and inspired by our namesake, Germany's first post-war Chancellor, Konrad Adenauer. Across the world, KAS supports programs that promote democracy, political participation, civic education, and human dignity. Here in Ghana, our mission goes beyond governance or elections. It is about ensuring that democracy is experienced by all members of society, and that democratic participation is available to everyone. When citizens living with disabilities can participate fully in public life, when access and equality become practical realities rather than distant ideals, then democracy truly thrives. Inclusion in this sense is not only justice and respect, but the fulfillment of constitutional promise. This evening's lecture provides an opportunity to reflect on how far we have come as a country, and perhaps even more importantly, how far we must still go to ensure full inclusion. It is fitting that we do so under the inspiration of His Excellency John Kufuor. His leadership reminds us that public service is ultimately about human dignity. To our partners, and in particular to Rights of Youth and to Right International in specific, I wish to express our sincerest appreciation for your tireless advocacy and for your engagement. Your partnership exemplifies the collaborative spirit that is needed to turn principles into practice. And to everyone present, representatives from academia, civil society, scholars, activists, community leaders, and representatives of disability organizations, thank you so much for lending your voice to this very important cause. May tonight's discussion inspire us not only to think, but to act and to ensure that equal access and opportunity become lived realities to all in Ghana. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anne. And true to her word, that was brief. Thank you very much. I believe today we'll hear words inclusion and others and others and others. So thank you very much for the brief words. I would like to invite someone I have grown to admire so much. And when I saw him this evening, I was saying, oh dear, God brought him here eventually. I believe that in rendering service as public servants, we should do it to the best of our ability. And this is one person who did that so well. It is my honor to invite the Honorable Francis Poku, who was a former Minister for National Security, and to give us a testimonial of the person who today's public lecture is named after. Let's welcome Honorable Francis Poku.
Good evening. Vice Chancellor, Professor Mauto all protocols observed. I want to share in the reflections that the previous speakers have made. The first reflection, is it a worthy foundation? I think yes, because the personality that is offering his patronage has a committed position when it comes to the needy of society. Having served as a security minister, I have known of this commitment. Even before his present situation, he pushed for social intervention issues. National youth employment was dear to his heart. Again, the needy, he wanted to address the dropouts from the BEC. He thought there was no job opening, so he shared in that predicament. He pushed for legislation on disability 2006 to emphasize this discriminatory aspect of the provision in the Constitution. As you know, Article 29 of the Constitution already made provision about disabilities, but he wanted to emphasize on the discriminatory aspects. What he saw was that the challenges of this country was the implementation of policies, and he put his weight behind these causes in various ways. And there are other interventions like school feeding. So a project like this that is drawing our attention to the plight of the disabled in this country is something that is in line with his own commitment to society. Whilst we gather, we need to give the legal interpretation to what disability is. And I believe this will come out for reflection. When you have school children who cannot go to school because they cannot cross the river and get drowned, that becomes an issue of disability. If you have a child who goes to school, he cannot see the blackboard very well because his parents cannot afford glasses, it's an issue we need to address. So there will be dimensions, very functional, on what disability is. So this foundation is calling out to reflection on those around us, which really the former President John Agyekum Kufuor believed in. And I trust that we are not going to make it meetings. We have to move into the area of advocacy. Let people understand what the issues are. And coming to these meetings should afford you the chance to really reflect on the plight of our own citizens and advocate inclusion in the affairs of this nation, and also make us committed to other related issues. When groups are concerned about Galamsey, it is because it's a potential for creating more disabilities in this country, and it's an issue we have to reflect on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Inclusion, advocacy, as we live here, let's take concrete actions and steps to make a difference so that what we are about to hear will not just remain in this room, and that we go and we are kind to people, persons with disability. Thank you very much.
Nana Kwabena Bomfeh, His Excellency former President John Agyekum Kufuor, who is ably represented here by his nephew Benjamin Kufuor, Vice Chancellor of the University of Professional Studies, Accra, Country Director of the Conrad Adner Stiftong, the Honorable Francis Poku, Honorable Obiamwa, Honorable Henry Seydou Dana, and my good friend Ivor Kwabena Green Street, and Honorable Joe Bedu Ansan. Esteemed academics, distinguished guests, friends from the media, leaders and members of disability organizations here in gathered, students of the University of Professional Studies, Accra, and my fellow seminarians from the Trinity Theological Seminary. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all to this inaugural lecture, pioneering this important conversation into our lives. John Agyekum Kufuor Annual Disability Lecture. Tonight, we gather not merely to speak or be heard, but to remember, to reflect, and to renew. We gather in the spirit of public reasoning, a tradition as old as civilization itself and as aged as humanity. From the sacred groves of our own ancestral lands to the bustling groves of the agoras of ancient Athens, public lectures have long served as instruments of civic education and moral inquiry. In Ghana, the oral traditions of our elders, whether by the pioneering and daring movement of the Guan, the proverbial wisdom of the Akan, the rhythmic storytelling of the Ewe, the regal declarations of the Moli Dagbani, or the unyielding tenacity of the Gan Adangme, who will shout Maibo even when they are down. Our lofty stories have carried the weight of public instruction. These were not ideal tales, but living texts shaping conduct, governance, and communal vision, according to Akpalu 2025. As Toby Green 2022 notes, the lecture has historically functioned as a marker of community and shared academic, religious, and civic identity, rooted in oral storytelling, from the Griot to Herodotus, and later adopted by most of the anti-colonial orators. There are public lectures that bear the names of the departed, figures who have contributed in shaping disciplines, movements, and ordination. To Haste and Bermudez 2017, memorial lectures serve as acts of remembrance and continuity which anchor institutional memory and aspiration. Tonight is, however, different. Different because it is a lecture named after a distinguished, gentle, good fellow, a living, healthy former president, perhaps the first of his kind in our country. This evening, we inaugurate a lecture named not after the departed, but a living legend, a classical statesman, a scholar, and a true philosopher. Tonight's initiation lecture is about a president whose moral clarity and legislative courage gave birth to one of Ghana's most consequential social justice instruments, the Persons with Disability Act 2006, Act 715. He was trained at Prempeh College at home and abroad in the Inns of Court and Oxford University in citizenship, law, politics, philosophy, and economics. While this lecture is named after him, it is indeed about a people, persons with disability, and in fact, all of us. It is a fact that if you live long and old enough, disability is as ubiquitous as death is. The life trajectory of the man after whom this lecture is named tells of this truism. He signed the Act 715 into being when he was without any known disability. Today, he is a wheelchair user. Another unique feature of this lecture is that it is a joint initiative of the Konrad Adner Stiftung, the University of Professional Studies, Accra, the Rise of Youth and Disability International, and the John Agyekum Kufuor Foundation. Nana Chair, distinguished audience, His Excellency John Agyekum Kufuor did not merely preside over a government. He presided over a moment of moral awakening on the global renaissance. Under his leadership, Ghana declared that persons with disabilities were no longer objects of pity or charity, but subjects of rights like any other Ghanaian. Ghana chose to embrace the reality that disability is not a taboo, even if it is a competitive disadvantage, as was unearthed by Bomfeh, Mensah in South 2025. Hence the need for inclusion. That inclusion is not a favor, but a constitutional mandate. That justice must be accessible to all, physically, socially, legally, and economically. To name this lecture after him, while he's still amongst us, is to affirm that legacy is not only something to be remembered, but it is indeed an imperative that must be sustained and continued. It is to say with gratitude and resolve, the work he began must be deepened, defended, and delivered to all. And yet, the theme for tonight's lecture compels us to speak plainly and humbly. The stark reality of disability legislation in Ghana. For, whereas the Act 715 was a landmark, it wasn't a destination. The reality today is sobering. Implementation gaps persist. Public infrastructure remain hostile to access. Employment discrimination endures. And voices of persons with disabilities are often too muffled in the policy corridors of our country. Stereotypical abuses exist to the personhood of PWDs. And this was uncovered by Danso and others 2024. What then is disability? We'll go with a classical definition given by the International Classification on Functioning, Disability and Health. That disability in 3 layers includes bodily or biological impairment, activity limitation, or participatory restriction. And if you go by this definition, we have seen disability defined in various forms and ways, and none of us here would be free from the tag of disability. My fellow theologians here will tell you that since the fall of man, we all have been disabled by sin. Here is a lived experience of a PWD who I suspect may be in this room. Recently, he was invited to a policy dialogue in one of government institutions to discuss disability policy. And as a wheelchair user, he and his colleagues, who are also wheelchair users, had to be carried up this public building so as they could participate in the meeting. It captured the stark contradiction between Ghana's legislative commitments and actual practice. The act required that within 10 years of a moratorium, all existing public buildings, especially those that belong to the state, should be retrofitted to give access. And yet, here we are in 2025, and I'm talking about an incident as recent as last week. And we have to confront with the indignity of persons with disability being carried onto government institutions. This lecture then is not just about a celebration, it is also a call to conscience. It is a civic summons to politicians, pharmacists, lawmakers, judges, educators, teachers, doctors, engineers, the build professionals, nurses, architects, employers, students, parents, grandparents, and all citizens alike. It is a reminder that legislation without implementation is like symbolism without substance. Disability inclusion is not charity, it is justice. May this lecture become, year after year, a forum where Ghana will pause and reflect and be pricked with sharpened thought that our promises must be made real and be given fuller meaning in the Act 715. Statistics at this point would do. According to the 2025 Global Disability Inclusion Report of the United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund, more than 1.3 billion people, representing about 16% of the world's population, live with some form of disability. About 40% of the population in Africa consist of people with disabilities, including 10 to 15% of school-going age children, representing about 300 million, according to the World Bank and WHO 2011. In Ghana, in 2010, when we conducted the first census that included disability as a theme, we counted 737,744. In 2021, the GSS computed that we had about 2,098,138 persons living with disability, an increase of about 5% and representing 8% of a population of about 30 million. Disability has also been defined as having a bidirectional link with poverty as a development issue. The World Bank highlights that unemployment of PWDs can cost 7% of GDP in low and middle income economies. And both the Millennium Development Goals and its successor, Sustainable Development Goals, have inclusion as the focus, especially of persons with disability. There has been a significant body of works in disability studies, but largely done in the lenses of the West, according to Garland-Thompson 2002. So it is important that we trace some historical foundations to disability legislation in Ghana. The African cultural narrative predates the earliest detection of disability studies, recorded around 1688, when William Molineux wrote a letter to John Locke invoking his views on what will happen when his wife, who had been blinded, could see again, having been taught how to handle a sphere. And yet, SK 2009 says that Africa's understanding of issues of disability is as old as humanity itself. Therefore, Africa's inclusive system of living that encourages this view of appreciating disability was best espoused by Nana Kwabena Ketia the Fifth in his thought-provoking book, African Culture in Governance and Development, 2013, at page 532, citing John Henry Clark, 1991. He says, "They still have not taken into consideration that Africa built a number of civilizations spanning thousands of years without a network of jails. They had no orphanages like we have in the West, because no one discarded their child. They had no homes for the aged, because nobody discarded their father, mother, or grandparent. Indeed, they had no homes to house such persons. What Westerners will later on call social agencies were actually built in the African society, where yentu abrewa entwini. And when you want to find out, you go and ask abrewa. Perhaps this would include that persons with disability were an integral part of the society. It is fair to say that there were no asylums as we have now. PWDs were an integral part of society, and this was buttressed by Professor Yanka in his thoughts and views on ethnographic views on disability in 2009. We understand from Conrad 2004 that young and crippled Sondiata Keita lived as a royal within the royal palace and was eventually healed of his crippling disability through sophisticated pre-colonial African medicine. The struggle for dignity and inclusion of PWDs is not a modern invention. It is a thread woven through the tapestry of human civilization, especially of the African origin. Long before the codification of international human rights law, ancient societies articulated principles of social justice, communal responsibility, and the protection of the vulnerable. The Mandin Charter of Sondiata Keita, who had been crippled and was healed, often referred to as the Kurkan Fuga. The Mandin Charter was proclaimed by Emperor Sundiata Keita at the founding of the Mali Empire following the rupture of the Songhai and Ghana empires. It's been recognized by UNESCO as part of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity. This oral constitution enshrined rights of life, physical integrity, education, and social inclusion, principles that resonate with contemporary disability right frameworks Amongst its 44 edicts, the Charter declared in Article 5 that human life is sacred. In Article 9, that children's education behoves the entire society. And in Article 20, it specifically said, do not ill-treat the disabled, the elderly, or the stranger. These provisions, though orally transmitted, reflect a prototype human rights ethos that emphasizes communal care and protection of marginalized groups consistent with indigenous African systems argued earlier. The Charter's civic symbolism was reinforced from great traditions, age-grade systems, and the clan assemblies like the Gbara, which ensured participatory governance, not the exclusion systems that we have of late. 2. Asante and Gonja disability legislation in pre-colonial Ghana. Asante and Gonja cultures share in the belief that humankind is traceable to divine origins despite differences in their accounts. Brima 1970, who eventually became Yagbonra Timu, suggests that the Quran influenced framing of life among the Gonjas. And to date, including the Yagbonra, you have to swear on the Quran that life with or without disability is of God. Similarly, Prempeh 2008, the first Asantehene to ever write Asante history, Ajman Prempeh I, posited that Asante framing of life largely was informed by the account of Okomfo Anokye, the chief priest, tracing human life to God as Oboadie. Indeed, among the Asantes, it was during the third Asantehene, Otumfo Kusi Obuadum, the first peacetime king, according to Osei Kwadwo 2016, whose blindness necessitated the guidance of the nation, and the nation acted. The following heralding words were designed to inform the movement of the blind king. Wo sorio or sorio, wo tinio or tine, wo tia, wo fro, wo sane, wo nante, wo chia, benkum, nifa, wo tina, and each time the response was immediate and telling that the action should be brebreo brebre, brebreo brebre, slowly majestic, slowly majestic. To date, we see it. Not only that, the Asantehene, when he's seated, he's guided and heralded on all sides, and he is aided to shake hands with the public. It is still a ritual today. It traces to Otumfo Kusi Obuadum. This recount of ancient Asante and Gonja legislation on disability has been done not for nostalgia, but to recall their humanity, compatibility, and sensitivity to nature. This ancient way of legislating by our forebears received an applause, not from any African scholar, but a colonialist who chose to learn from our ancients and was taught accordingly. Robert Sutherland Rattray, 1929, at page 398. And this is what he says. The ancients who framed the native constitution were burdened with a weight of responsibility from which those who framed European laws and constitutions with which we are familiar might well have recoiled in hopeless despair. Why? Rattray continues. The constitution of their tribe or nation was such that it would ensure, or at least flagrantly militate against, the normal function of what we regard as nature's immutable laws. They made laws in sync with nature, with the unseen. How wise do our parliamentarians consult these other forces in making our laws? Contemporary disability legislation. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1948. In the aftermath of of World War II, the United Nations adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, affirming that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights in Article 1. Though not specific to disability, the UDHR laid the moral and legal foundation for subsequent instruments, including the Declaration of Rights of Disabled Persons, 1975, and the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, 2006. The 1975 Declaration explicitly recognized the right of disabled persons to 1. Dignity and respect. 2. Medical and social rehabilitation. 3, economic and social security. 4, participation in cultural and recreation life. Ghana's journey to the Persons with Disability Act 2006. The passage of the Persons with Disability Act 2006, Act 715, was not a spontaneous legislative gesture. It was the fruit of decades of civic agitation, constitutional promise, and global influence. It stands as a response to domestic advocacy, a reflection of Ghana's constitutional commitment to international human rights norms, and, of course, visionary leadership of John Agyekum Kufuor. Ghana's 1992 constitution had laid the moral and legal groundwork for disability rights. As cited earlier, Article 29 explicitly guarantees the rights of persons with disabilities, including the protection against exploitation and discrimination, access to education and employment, participation in social and cultural life. Yet, over a decade of this constitution working, these constitutional promises remained aspirational. There were no enabling legislation to operationalize these rights, leaving persons with disability vulnerable to systemic neglect, according to Asante and Sasu 2015. Partly, the push for the legislative action was spearheaded by the Persons with Disability in the Ghana Federation of the Disabled, alongside with civil society organizations and disability rights advocates. Through sustained lobbying, public education, and strategic engagement with Parliament, these groups demanded a law that would give teeth to Article 29. Coincidentally, their efforts met the era of the president who was in tune with history and the realities of the times of his tenure. So the collaboration yielded in what we have today to discuss, Act 715. The combined effort created a moral imperative that Parliament could not ignore. In June 2006, on 9th August, having had the Persons with Disability passed into being, His Excellency, former President John Agyekum Kufuor, signed it into law. The act was hailed as a breakthrough, especially given that most African countries at the time lacked dedicated disability legislation. Key provisions of Act 715 had 8 parts and 60 sections, which included rights to education, employment, healthcare, housing, and public access. That is why it is worrying that as we speak now, there are persons with disability who are having challenges with housing. It established the National Council on Persons with Disability with little resources or not at all. Provisions for rehabilitation, transportation, and participation in cultural life, and a moratorium of 10 years which expired in 2016. Let's now look at some positive impacts of Act 715 since its passage in 2006. 1. It has served as an awakening on the ubiquity of disability. It has enhanced awareness of disability rights and increased recognition of disability as a human condition for inclusion in line with the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. Both the 2010 and 2021 Population and Housing Census reports considered disability as a thematic area, and it enjoyed serious commentary from the Constitutional Review Commission headed by Emeritus Professor Fiajo. That is why it hurts me that we allowed that laborious work to be done, and virtually in vain. I'm not too sure what the H. Kwesi Prempeh Committee is doing, but we hope. We can only hope in hope. It has generated interest in disability research in academia and civil society activism, frowning on the abusive use of words at disability or on persons with disability. That is why I find it strange that law enforcement agencies are not going after people who are bold enough to sit on radio and TV and use derogatory terms at persons with disability. Religious departments have established, religious bodies have established departments, and I'm happy that at least we have the Pentecost Ministry on Persons with Disability here. Pastor Nyami is here. We also have the Adventist Possibilities Ministry, and I'm very much aware that within the Catholic Church, Father Campbell is doing a lot with his ministry on leprosy. More buildings are making accommodation for ramps, even though sometimes the ramp is there and the access to the ramp is something that serves as a block. And we are also aware that 3% of the District Assembly Common Fund has been allocated to serve as, some provision in the absence of a clearly stated disability fund in the Act. There have been a guaranteed framework and reference material for disability activism, politically, socially, economically, and legally. Parliament, in this occasion, came together to see the law passed into being, and we are hoping that that example will be followed. To be fair and balanced, here are some limitations. Despite its promises, Act 715 has faced criticisms for its omissions from Asante and Sasu 2015, Mfofu McCarthy and others 2020, Danso and others 2024. And these are some of the issues that they highlighted. One, that the Act does not fully align with the CRPD standards which Ghana ratified in 2012. That it is weak in and poor in enforcement mechanisms. And that the NCPD has limited enforcement authority and no resources to work. No provisions for political participation, voting rights, housing rights, or protection against gender-based discrimination and liability of construction professionals. And I'm very particular about this. I invited my friends in the build industry professionalism that why should they continue to approve of building of roads, buildings that do not include disability inclusion or friendly standards. Now I do a comparative analysis of the Persons with Disability Act 2005, integrating recent findings and international benchmarks along 5 thematic headings, namely its comprehensiveness, implementation and enforcement, access to the law, and then the position with respect to legislation from elsewhere, and I conclude on disability activism in this analysis. First, comprehensiveness and contemporary relevance. Act 715 was a landmark achievement in Ghana's disability rights movement, providing legal recognition and protection for persons with disabilities. And it has, in a way, allowed what we are experiencing now. Not only am I having on my right someone interpreting, but on TV and on our screens, we insist that these things are done. It covers a wide range of domains, including education, employment, healthcare, transportation, and access to public services. However, its definition of disability has been flagged as relatively narrow, lacking the social and rights-based framing found in instruments like the UN Convention on Rights of Persons with Disabilities, 2006. For example, Act 715 does not explicitly address psychosocial disabilities, intersectionality, or evolving concepts of accessibility and autonomy. 2, enforcement and implementation gaps. Despite its comprehensiveness, implementation remains weak. The Act called for the development of legislative instruments to operationalize its provisions, but nearly 2 decades after, these instruments are still pending or incomplete. A 2025 accessibility audit by the GFT revealed that only 14% of public facilities had any retrofitting accessibility. 8% had accessibility toilets, and 0% of transport system met accessibility standards. Municipal and district assemblies lack budgetary allocations and technical capacity to enforce the Act, despite a 2017 executive guidelines for MMDAs. And sometimes, since I found that guideline, I've been wondering how many MMDCs are even aware of it and are informed by the provisions in it. The 10-year moratorium for retrofitting public buildings expired in 2016, yet state-owned facilities, buildings, remain not committed. Access to the law, public awareness, and legal literacy. Awareness of Act 715 among the general public and even among PWDs is alarmingly low. The Ghana Federation of Disability Organizations found that many PWDs do not know their rights under the law, nor how to assert them through legal and administrative channels. To this end, there is a need for education on the Act 715 and relevant provisions of the National Constitution 1992 on disability in formats fit for all: citizens, law enforcement officers, judges, lawyers, PWDs. 4. Comparative jurisdictional analysis. Compared to disability legislation in other jurisdictions, Act 715 is foundational but may be deficient in some respects and in key areas, perhaps partly because of the absence of the legislative instruments I mentioned earlier. I have picked out 4 countries, 2 from the global north and 2 from the global south. South Africa, they passed their Equality Act and White Paper on Disability in 2000, which actually saw full implementation in 2015. But compared to Act 715, it has stronger enforcement and rights-based framing. Kenya, they had their Disability Act in 2003, 3 years before ours. And they have similar gaps in implementation, but they have integrated the UN CRPD better than Ghana. To the United States, who passed their American Disability Act in 1990, they have a robust enforcement system, clear standards, and litigation pathways. The United Kingdom had the Equality Act in 2010, which is more comprehensive in anti-discriminatory practices against disability. It can be discerned from the above that Ghana's Act lacks the robust enforcement architecture and judicial remedies found in these jurisdictions mentioned. It does also not mandate reasonable accommodation, which is a core CRPD principle. It is silent on how housing rights can be enforced. 5. Disability activism and rights assertion. Despite structural challenges, Ghanaian disability activists have used Act 715 as a mobilizing tool. Organizations like the Ghana Blind Union, Ghana National Association of the Deaf, and the GFD, which is the umbrella body, have conducted accessibility audits and public campaigns, engaged parliament and ministries on budgetary inclusion, filed complaints and petitions on discrimination and access barriers, and partnered with international donors to build capacity and visibility. However, legal action or activism under Act 715 remain rare due to weak enforcement mechanisms and limited access to justice. And I want the lawyers in the House to take this up, perhaps on pro bono. Activists continue to call for the full domestication of CRPD, the passage of legislative instruments, and the establishment of a Disability Rights Commission without challenging same in the courts. Perhaps it will be useful to remind us that after America passed the American Disability Act into being in 1990, it took Donald Galloway in 1994, which has been captured in the popular movie Runaway Jury, to go to court and assert his right as a blind person to sit on the jury in the United States of America, to have the rights advocated in the act actually manifest. Ghana's Act 715 was put to test in an unreported case in 2016, the case of Dr. Festus Niboy as plaintiff and the Ghana Ports and Harbour Authority as defendant, in which judgment was delivered on July 4, 2016 for the plaintiff. The judgment of Her Ladyship Justice Gifty Dechem, Mrs. In the judgment of Her Ladyship Justice Gifty Dechem, the court took judicial notice of the fact that diabetes and hypertension as chronic ailments constituted disability under Act 715, adding that, quote, the incontrovertible evidence is that prior to plaintiff applying for employment with defendant, the subject matter of the instant suit, he worked as defendants on part-time basis, commonly called locum, spanning over 6 years. And during these years, the evidence does not suggest that his medical conditions hindered his ability to perform his duties as a medical doctor. Plaintiff's medical condition cannot therefore justify defendant's conduct of withdrawing the offer in the intendment of section 4.2 of Act 715. Here is somebody who had worked as a locum to Ghana Post and Harbour Authority. And when there was an opening for him to apply as a full-time medical officer, after conducting a medical test, they wanted to replace him with someone, and they were going to use the instance of his diabetes or hypertension. He went to the courts through my friend Egbert Fable Jr., and the court ruled for him. The stark reality of disability legislation in Ghana, from promise to paradox. Nana, my father, ladies and gentlemen, the passage of the Persons with Disability Act 2006, Act 715, was a moment of legislative triumph. That we know. It signaled Ghana's commitment to justice, inclusion, and constitutional fidelity. It was in every sense a promise, a declaration that PWDs would no longer be invisible to the law. However, promises, as history teaches us, are only as powerful as their fulfillment. Nearly 2 decades later, the reality is stark. The architecture of inclusion remains skeletal despite positive gains. The rights enshrined in Act 715 are often left as aspirational rather than actionable. The lived experiences of PWDs, and many of whom are here, reveal troubling gaps between law and fidelity. This is not merely a policy failure, it is a moral paradox. Simply, it is a mark of infidelity to the law, as observed by Hubert Humphrey, who became former Vice President of the United States. In a small book titled The Cause is Mankind, at page 25, the law can be no better than the people who administer it and those who are called upon to obey it. In short, its success depends on the attitude of all Americans, on their attitudes towards freedom, on the stand they take against prejudice and discrimination. And I invite you to simply replace America with Ghana. Reform recommendations toward a rights-based disability framework. To move from mere legislation to meaningful implementation, here are my humble and modest thoughts. Nana Chairman, 1, and I was hoping that the Minister for Education would be here. The Ghana Education Service must introduce curricula for basic schools on disability awareness, understanding disability, and all the ABC of disability, so that we will all be informed to overcome our disability of ignorance when we see others as disabled, when in fact they are differently able. 2, align and domesticate the UN CRPD for compliance with international best practice. 3, strengthen the legal definition and scope with cultural undertones to clearly define disability to cover political rights, housing, and digital inclusion. 4, establish enforcement mechanisms and weaponize penalties for non-compliance by empowering a well-resourced NCPD with quasi-judicial authority. 5, mandate accessibility audits and inclusive designs that will require periodic audits of public infrastructure, education facilities, and transport systems. 6, institutionalize disability impact and health assessment by integrating disability into all policies, budgeting, and legislative processes. 7, operationalize Act 715, particularly Section 35, to establish in all district assessment centers for early detection of disability, so as we can attend to early detection and reduce the impact and more importantly, resource the National Assessment Center not too far from here in the Achimota Forest. I have been there a couple of times. It's an eyesore. 8. Make Act 715 accessible to all in all formats: Braille, audio, simplified, and simplified language. 9. My friend, former IGP, is gone. The Ghana Police Service, the Judicial Service, DVLA, and other services must all incorporate the relevant acts, provisions, and sections of Act 715 into their training manuals, so that a DVLA official will not look at somebody who has driven for more than 15 years because of her appearance, who was coming to renew her license, to suggest that she could not drive just because of your disability of ignorance. We need information to be better equipped. 10. The National Media Commission and the GJA must make a deliberate effort to train journalists in disability reporting and encourage the recruitment of PWDs who are into journalism. 11. The Ghana Legal Information Institute, ably represented here, GALI, should be supported in the effort to make legislation on disability accessible to all. My conclusion. Nana Chairman, distinguished guests, esteemed academics, students, and fellow persons with disability. Tonight we have journeyed through history, from the Mandin Charter to the UN Declaration of Human Rights and to the Act 715. We have traced the arc of promise and the weight of the paradox. Now we must speak not only as scholars and advocates, but as citizens who experience and identify with disability. Let it remind us that disability inclusion is not a technical adjustment. It is a moral reckoning. It is not a niche concern. It is a national test. It is not a favor to a few. It is a measure of our collective humanity and a healing to our distorted selves Nana Kwabena Ketia was talking about. Disability, it is said, is not the preserve of persons who live with disability today. Besides, the development process of the country cannot be sustainable unless it takes into account all segments of society, including minority and marginalized groups whose contribution can greatly reduce the rate of dependency on the economy, thereby working to bolster the GDP of our country. Therefore, to name this lecture after His Excellency John Agyekum Kufuor, while he is alive, is to say, Papa, we see you. We thank you. We will continue the work. We promise to carry on your legacy now and not wait till you have left and unable to see how much we value your effort. Papa, we value you. Let this annual lecture become a civic ritual, a moment when Ghana pauses to ask, have we kept faith with our promise? Have we built a society where no one is left behind? Let it be a drumbeat of accountability, a torch of remembrance, a platform of renewal, and the audacity to walk the lofty dreams of those who have gone before us. Let us live here, not only informed, but transformed. For the stark reality of disability legislation in Ghana is not a verdict. It is a challenge. Let us live here having been challenged to see disability as a part of humanity. Let us see ourselves as one people, one nation, and one destiny. Together, we can best build. Thank you for your attention. God bless you for coming, and may God bless our homeland Ghana and make us great and strong and empathetic to disability. Thank you.
The applause, the applause. I was looking around and didn't find anybody dozing, or everybody was listening with rapt attention. So let's do it one more time for Dr. Bomfeh. We have journeyed from John Locke to the Asante Kingdom, to the Kunja Kingdom, to what the issues are with the legislation, what your role is as a citizen, what we have to do from here. Thank you. Thank you so very much. We will be advocates. We would make sure that persons with disability are included in everything that we do. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Now, Dr. Bomfeh says he's ready for your questions, contributions, and any person with disability who wants to share their lived experiences. The floor is open now. A few questions, intervention, contribution. Kindly raise your hand and the mic will come to you. Please make it brief so others can also have the opportunity to ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Michael Owusu-Asare. I'm a disability inclusion consultant. I'm a wheelchair user. I'm just saying that because I sit in this seat, you might think I'm all right, but I ain't. Thank you so much, Dr. Bomfeh. Nana, thank you so much for allowing us to be able to sit here and giving opportunity for persons with disability to, and disability inclusion to become a public a lecture here. Dr. Bomfeh just mentioned that someone last week was supposed to be in a public building and was carried. Yes, it is me. I'm the one. It's not a myth. It's not a, he wasn't lying. It's me. That's my mobility scooter. But more importantly, I am grateful to President John Agyekum Kufuor. In 2000, I was in first year at the University of Ghana. I had a disability. I wasn't using wheelchair, but then I had a mobility challenge and I was in Commode. But his administration did something wonderful. He created inclusive governance with other foreign agents, company, for other presidents that gave opportunity for people like myself to be able to travel and live in the UK and to experience disability inclusion, which is what is that exposure is helping me in my line of work as a person with disability and as a disability inclusion consultant. But I just want to share one more thing, a story of one experience. I had an opportunity to go and train on disability awareness in Kumasi by a donor agency. I was given plane ticket to fly so I can do the training and come back. 6 o'clock I was at the airport. Passion Airline would not let me fly because I couldn't access the stairs into the plane unassisted. I said, how is that possible? If I fly to UK, I am able to fly to UK, and I'm told no. And the domestic airlines, they don't have the assistance to get you into the plane. I felt that was a shame. So I couldn't go. I lost the money. I couldn't get paid that day. I just want to say that all is not lost, but there's still more we can do. So if you are here and you are able to take disability inclusion to the C-suites of organizations, it would help. Because if companies appreciate persons with disability, society would also respect us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Dr. Dana, I believe you want to say a few words.
Thank you. I think all of us on the disabled side of the social spectrum, we can only thank and pray that God protects and gives strength to Dr. Bomfeh. any good thing is hard to do among human beings. We are in society, it looks as if somehow the understanding seems to be that persons with disability should be downtrodden, or they should be just content with being behind. And they forget, people who think that way forget that persons with disability are also Ghanaians. And unless we are prepared to do great things for Ghana, Ghana will lose. My experience, which I'm very, I would like to share with you, is there was a time when I realized that I was not liked in the secondary school. We were 12 blind students, and I was the one, and my colleague, we were not liked at all. And one day, somebody told me that, Henry, you know why people don't like you? I say, no. He said, why is it that always I want to be first in class? That because I'm blind. When you are first, they insult the sighted people. So even if I know, still, I should be content with being last. But if I insist on want to be first, second, I'll run into many problems. Some spirit came on me and I quoted Proverbs chapter 14, verse 12. That is that the right way that you think may lead you to death. But you see, you won't die. Because of God, you won't die. And that was what pushed me through the hatred up to where I got to, and I'm still on it. And I think that Dr. Bomfeh, may God bless you. This is a very sensitive topic because it raises issues, and particularly when we are in hardship in a country, some people even don't want to have time to talk about disability. They think it's secondary, but it is not, because the persons with disability are also Ghanaians, and unless we decide that we are not proud of ourselves as Ghanaians, we conscience should prick us that persons of disability are Ghanaians and they form part of our liberal democracy. Thank you.
I saw a few.
Amputee. Most of the social welfare offices, they are always at the top. Is there something that can be done about it? Make mobility very difficult for you to move to the office to access whatever you need. Thank you.
I just want to, it has been an experience today to hear these talks, especially Dr. Bomfeh, what he said, all that he said, it's an education. But I want us to also, as persons with disabilities, that we should break the barriers. We shouldn't be timid at certain places. I will use myself as an example. When I completed college, I was posted to, first degree, I was posted to Mampon Technical College of Education. I got there, the principal told me, this place, we don't use Braille. I told him, I don't even qualify to teach in a special school. I've been trained to teach in the so-called, excuse me to say, normal school. Then he went on. The only thing I told him at the end, he will put it this way, I told him at the end, if you don't need me, then write a letter and I'll send it to GES for reposting. That time, the colleges of education were under GES. This is something that we have to do. When I said, he said, oh, I'm not discriminated against you. Finally, he accepted me. I rose up there to be a head of department, and people saw my contributions there. It was through this work of standing our grounds against discrimination that I got the chance to further my education and being, able to graduate in guidance and counseling, because I want us to be in positions, to be at places, depending on our profession, and to educate people. People are keeping their young ones in the house because of disability. I just want to be snappy. But we have to let them know that there are schools, there are institutions that can take care of
such persons with disabilities. I'm doing that advocacy, especially in the north, getting parents to bring their children to send their children to either Wa School for the Blind or a Kropon School for the Blind. And some deaf students, today, when I was on my way coming, somebody called me, he has finished SS, and his grades are good. I told him to apply to what? Either Winneba or UCC, a deaf student. And the guy is very, very brilliant. So we have to do the work. We shouldn't be here and say, oh, we are there, and people are discriminated, then we'll recite to our faith. No. Please. Just for the last one, I was 32 years when I had an accident and lost my sight. That didn't put me down. I went for rehabilitation, went to the college. By then, I had finished sixth form and working. And through college, I had my first degree, the master's and PhD today. So it is not something that we cannot do. And God willing, I'm not saying that, blowing my horns, but I'm the first visual impaired student to graduate with PhD in UCC. And that is God. Thank you.
Thank you very much. But kindly make it brief so a lot more people can ask questions too. All right, thanks.
Okay, my name is Benjamin Mensah, and I thank Dr. James Kwabena Bomfeh and all great people who made this lecture happen this evening. In fact, personally, I've been inspired, and I'm praying that God should strengthen them so that they can do more than what they've said. And then also to say something about the timidity of we the disabled being timid. Let me say, for a disabled person to climb to the top, maybe to accept to school to the top, has done enough. And maybe those times may not be this time. And also a way that maybe you want to battle your rights or your way may offend someone that way. Maybe the person might also even say, these people, they are rude, they don't know how to. That's what is going on nowadays. And so for me, I'm just saying that once a disabled person climbs to the top, the system should work. It's not now that the person has completed, then the person must go and also battle, struggle with headmasters, headmistress, say all. I know that if the systems are effective, at least when you complete school or when you complete your technical whatever and you are qualified, the system should, push you to occupy a space to contribute to the growth of the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Though I didn't hear him, but I know what he could do. And my Kwabena Bomfeh, PhD, all that we have heard, I want to say something in few words. Some can see and say. Others can see and sing. Some can hear and heed. Others can hear and hate. Some can dive and dissolve. Others can dive and dissolve. What is my position? What is your position? What is our position on what we have heard about the stark reality on disability? As we go, let's carry it as our heart pulls us to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Han at the back.
I want to find out. So the Act actually talks about employment of persons with disabilities. Is there a quota system or an incentive that government has put in place for employment of persons with disability? And if yes, how is that being monitored and how is that being checked that persons with disability equally have employment opportunities? With the lived experience, I work with persons with amputation, and mostly I find myself with the hospital settings. I realize what we face is not only about policy, but about the practice of what we always talk about. Hospitals are still inaccessible. Example is even our National Referral Center. You go to some departments and the place is not accessible. And then I ask, how can we bridge these gaps? We talk about transportation. 0%, as I heard from your lecture, Dr. Bomfeh, 0% of our transport system meets the criteria. How do we bridge these gaps that we are talking about here? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We always or every year as is the team is talking about. But my question is the burden of knowledge. Now that we know, what are we going to do? The Disability Act that we are talking about, the airline is not being passed. Even though the act is not that much detailed, but when that act is being implemented fully, persons with disability, much of our problems will be solved. So after this lecture, my question to Doctor, what is the action that you are going to lead so that the LI will be passed?
Who worked on the Disability Act at its legislation process is here. My friend James Piatu Accra. Honorable, come and say something before I proffer what I have researched into from your lived experiences of the passage of the Act.
Nana Chair, let me say that the situation in which we are, if you don't say I am, nobody is going to say you are. That's the way I see it. When the disability law was passed, I was on the Committee on Employment and Social Welfare. So we expected the Ministry of Employment and Social Welfare to take the lead to make sure that they have, proper access for those who want to climb up and that. We realized that they were not doing it. We visited them, they said they were. We went to the district assemblies, they had, you could see that there was no attempt at all to do this thing. So the last person who spoke that what do we do, what next? My suggestion is that, thank God now, I think 3 days ago we had about 3 disabled people being called to the bar, 4. So now we should test the law. For me, I think that is what will let us act. That will let those who are supposed to act. That we should be testing the law in court. That you are supposed to do that. You are supposed to do this by the law. You haven't done that. And I believe that people will start now acting and doing what they're supposed to be doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. To the questioner about what the Act says, if you read especially the 59 sections before the moratorium in section 60, it actually gives tax waivers, incentives, and holidays for companies that would employ persons with disability. It also offers persons with disability a framework, as I argued earlier, to assert rights, to insist. And my conversations with Dr. Dana revealed the number of times that he, despite the affluence and his pedigree, has had to fight people who should know better but are abusing or offending the law. So what Honorable Apiatu Ankra said, I think the last time, I must make a confession here, the last time we had the disability conversations in October 2024, I was tasked to look round and see how we can embark on a class action, at least challenging the public buildings that had defied or failed to comply with the moratorium on the act. Maybe part of my failure, and I'm not giving excuses, is that one of the senior lawyers I was counting on, who is here and is listening to this lecture, had said we should hold on. I'm sure he's challenged this evening, and when we leave here, we will take it up. I didn't mention any name, but I also believe that maybe Dr. Dana and my good friend Ivor Kwabena Green Street would agree with me that perhaps if we can put together a team of lawyers with disability leading this kind of legal action, it may be good for us. And I think that it is in this connection that I am particularly happy that we are having this inaugural lecture. And we want to be grateful to the Conrad Adner Stiftung for they adopting as part of their own objects that we carry on this fight. I think the last point I want to make is this, and this is something I took from my tutor and mentor, Kwesi Subi. Nobody will fight for you if you don't fight for yourself. Nobody will seek your interest if you don't assert your interest. We have a lot of friends out there. We have a lot of allies out there. Sometimes they just want to hear us raise our issue so they will be aware. We are very much aware of a case I cited, which is unreported. The judge actually acknowledged the research that Egbert Fable Jr. had done by incorporating or introducing the persons with disability law in his pleadings. And she adopted it and actually gave, the plaintiff his reliefs. And GPHA paid for it. I am sure many people or many lawyers have not even heard about this case. But it is something that we can stand on and build on. Let us leave here resolved that it won't take someone else to seek our interests other than ourselves. And that we have a lot of allies and friends out there, considering the eminent persons who have gathered here this evening, that if we make the effort, indeed, our voices will be heard. I want to say that until we drop dead, we cannot stop fighting. Life is war, and we are in the battlefield. We must fight as such. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bomfeh. I believe the conversations will continue on the corridors, near our car parks, and we are resolving from here that we are going to advocate, we are going to make a difference, and that this public lecture won't be one of those where when it's ended, everything goes to sleep till the next year. And that as individuals, we are going to make a difference, a real difference, that we would see the person and not the disability first, and that we are going to make sure whatever we do to be inclusive in our own small way. And then we allow the legislatures and the politicians to, I think I'm taking the work of the chairman. At this juncture, I hear the group that was supposed to give us the musical interlude is here. So briefly, we'll give them a few minutes to perform. They've come from a long way. And so
praises to our God. Sing praises to our God. Extol his name upon his grave. Sing praises to our God. And magnify and extol his name. Our God is great. Praises to our God. Sing praises to our God. Extol his name upon his grave. Sing praises to our God. And magnify and extol his name. Our God is great.
Let's appreciate the SDA Possibilities Ministry. We thank you so much. Nana Chairman, I would like to invite you to give us your closing remarks. Let's welcome Nana Kwabena Bomfeh the fifth.
Still studying all the existing protocols, I'm already at loss for words. One, when the gentlemen and the ladies were singing, my mind went to the fact that you had some of the greatest singers we've had in the world happen to have been blind, you know. And then I started remembering people that we've read about. The fine physicist who was in Oxford and was completely disabled, couldn't even speak, and was working all kinds of math solutions, mathematic solutions. And when Dr. Bomfeh mentioned Dr. Clark, Henry Clark, my mind went to the fact that I still listen to his speeches, and his best speeches were made when he was blind. The best speeches on the, if you go to the YouTube, you just Google, is it YouTube? Yes. You get him and then listen to, but the best ones. And then he comes over for a lecture and takes over the lecture completely. Doesn't bother about who is there, what is there, and so on and so forth. And that was Clark. But you know, let me start off with the fact that when Kabila started speaking, my mind went to when Ghana was changing from NLC to a new political program. And I went for a PP, Progress Party rally in my village. And a man spoke. His name is Kwabena Bomfeh. And when he finished speaking, the women standing in front of me, who could barely speak English, I don't even think they understood English. And not understanding English in our society is a form of disability. So they looked at each other and said, Kwabena Bomfeh. When Dr. Bomfeh was extolling Kufo, all kinds of adjectives, I was just sitting there and said, hey, Kwabena Bomfeh. I was laughing to myself. But PC, thanks for the beautiful words you said about the things being done here. I was really overwhelmed. I hope most institutions have taken that into consideration. In fact, that made me think about what you were, when you spoke about it. Which hall were you in? Oh my God. That is not disability friendly of all the halls in the university. So when you said it, I'm very happy that you went to the University of Commonwealth, and therefore you progressed as a vandal, and you are still one. But honestly, that hall, I think we have to do something about this disability thing. And then, of course, we have the Honorable Francis Poku. I'd even forgotten he was honorable. But sometimes these titles leave your mind. Everybody knows him as Francis Poku. I think you have another nickname too. And when he was also talking about before the need for this lecture, you just knew that we had come for something quite historic. Of course, when you mentioned my little brother's name, Green Street, I said, oh, the CPP did well. They even elected somebody who was in a wheelchair to be their presidential candidate. Please give me a round of applause. And the beauty about that was that it was an MPP man who also made sure that this law was put into effect. And then lastly, we forget Dr. Dana, that he was made a minister for chieftaincy by the current president, John Mahama. Am I right? So it just tells you that when it comes to disability, we can at least get together over a subject and work towards it. And listen to this speech, I think I will be motivated to all come together to do it. When the Conrad Adna Foundation lady was talking, I was sitting down laughing at her. I'm sure she's wondering why. Because she kept on saying, and democracy, and I was wondering whose democracy. But fortunately, she used the word which was also used by the MC, inclusion, equal access, and so on. And I said, thank God, because everybody defines democracy in his or her own way. I'm sure that the definition of democracy by Trump is very different from the usage of democracy by Putin, and at the same time too by Starmer. So whenever they say democracy, democracy, please sit down and listen to the word quietly. But when she used the word inclusion, so the lady knows what she is talking about. Thank you. In fact, Kabila, when you went into history, I was so amazed that you started with Sundiata Keita, because it is something that we have. I'm still studying Sundiata Keita for some work I'm doing, on the idea of warfare and so on, and his mother being the hunchback and all that. But it was wonderful that you went as far back and then also explained something I didn't know. Much as I'm doing some work on chieftaincy, not because I'm a chief, I'm doing it because I think that we need that kind of work. I never knew that holding the chief's waist was to guide him. I didn't know that holding his hands. I'm glad I don't allow people to hold my waist and my hands. But it's quite interesting that it was, what's his name? The Asante, the chief of Kumasi, who brought this up. The most beautiful thing is that there's a man I use hesitantly, and he's called Rattray. Not because I don't like him, but because he's a colonial anthropologist. And so I know that whatever comes out of Rattray is not in my interest, but in the interest of those who colonized us. But I know that Rattray noticed something, which Kabila made comments about, and it touched me. We don't talk about rights in our society. We talk about responsibilities. Disabled people are our responsibility, just as I am their responsibility. Our society is a society of responsibility. So Infante, which I speak very well, even though I'm a hunter, whenever you are in a position, or your wasazi, anything is your position or your suzi. That's my rights. But our constitution doesn't even mention the word responsibility anywhere. It's all about rights, 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 rights. And that one too, I understand what it emanates from. It comes from Europe because of their feudal culture, out of which such words came. So let's start thinking in a particular way. Being Africans, she said it, inclusion. He said it over and over and over again. Honorable Francis Poku said that I'm a brother's keeper. We are all one. And it's in that unity that we can do well. But I like the end. I don't want to belabor this issue because I saw some food being passed around.